no matter where you've come from, whether it be across the seas, across the state or across town. Once again, a very warm and sincere welcome to you to Gadigal.
So when the National Trust heard the Act was to be reviewed, we wanted to make sure that this would be a good thing, a strengthening of legislation, not a weakening.
The community wants strong protections over our heritage, not ones you can drive trucks through, frankly. They want strong protections. And that's not to say they don't want also adaptive reuse and all the things that make heritage work in practice, but they don't want it fiddled with and destroy the protections that are there. They actually want stronger protections.
If we're not careful, the next 2 or 3 decades will see a forest of high-rise towers, 30, 40 stories, marching up Church Street, right through to the jail, all through the provisions of changes to the local environmental plan, which are currently before government.
The reality is that government has had to be dragged screaming to get items that are in its ownership on the State Heritage Register.
Certainly the state government sees heritage as a problem and it wants to be able to liberate its assets.
In the past, a lot of those organisations were able to nominate a member to the Heritage Council, and there were up to 5 organisations that could do that, and now there's only one, which is the National Trust. And on top of that, the Heritage Council doesn't have to be consulted on many things, such as state significant development.
There's no obligation on government to come and talk to David and the Trust.
We've got a Heritage Council constituted by political appointments and a lack of the diversity of expertise in heritage and its various moving parts around that table.
The diminishing of the significance of little L local heritage. It is something that is of such importance because at the end of the day, all our heritage is local.
Perhaps we could finish that off with a larger political question that's been asked in here, which, given the relatively small number of owners involved in state heritage items, what are the interests, in a sense, that are driving the review?
It's a really good question, especially when the Minister had come out already saying that his priority as Minister for Heritage was to ensure that there was a standalone Indigenous Heritage Act.
There is no trust in the community in relation to the government over heritage and the environment.
You can see the government is the overwhelming owner of our state's heritage as it is listed.
Most people presume that because we have a Heritage Act, it's going to protect heritage places because that is the purpose and objectives of it. However, under state significant developments and state significant infrastructure, the Heritage Act gets turned off. It's really important to individualise your submission, and that's why that leads on from the point before. Tell them why you're writing it. Choose a few different points. Try not to template it or at least reword it slightly because it carries far more weight. You don't want yours to be put with 150 other people's and counted as one.
If the processes were better resourced, we'd have better outcomes. I think one of the difficulties that we see in looking at those statistics is that the vast majority of heritage places across New South Wales are dealt with under local government. And they're not being dealt with under the Heritage Act and they're not being dealt with under the Heritage New South Wales. Those people need to be resourced at a local government level and at the state level.
It seems to me that there's a great danger that this categories activity is confusing a listing activity with a management activity, and that what the problem that categorisation is trying to fix is a perceived problem with management and providing management guidance and management outcomes for particular places. But to call it listing is to, I think, completely confuse things. And there's been a very, very long principle in Australian heritage conservation practice that you keep listing decisions separate from management decisions.
I've been involved in a number of state significant development and state significant infrastructure projects, which have had quite a long list of heritage-related conditions of consent, but it becomes an exercise in managing a giant compliance schedule because the consent authority simply wants to say, right, clause 4.7.6.2, oh, we've got a report that addresses that. Thank you. And to be honest, I suspect a lot of these documents are never looked at by anyone other than the consultant who prepares them.
And the National Trust. We read them.
Good. Glad to hear it.
But it is a key point that there's a bit of a box ticking approach.
When heritage councils and authorities were created as part of that sort of 1970s wave of legislation, I think the community had a great high hope that heritage would now be safe.
I think the Act is very robust and quite all-encompassing. There may be a few little bits that need adjusting, but I think it's basically providing the Heritage Division or the Heritage Office, whatever they are called today, and whichever department they're in, but providing them with the resources they need to carry out the objectives of that Act. Because so many of these review questions are about questioning the performance. You know, the problems have arisen because things are being frustrated by time or whatever, or processing, and that's because of under-resourcing.
The strategic planning that's necessary through the planning system is letting these landscapes down. I think that there's no longer that clear integration and that respect for the way the regional plan was originally written.
I think it also comes back to just making sure that you consult with the relevant communities, which is a Borough Charter principle as well.
Again, these various advisory committees that used to exist to supplement the expertise of the Heritage Council have largely been done away with. And many of us in this room volunteered many, many hours on those committees and probably would do again if we were given the opportunity, but most of those committees don't exist.
I think skills and experience are really important, but I think that can be very broadly cast. I think there has to be knowledge.
We identify a place and we identify its values, and we take it up to understanding it to the present, but we don't think about how it may be able to go into the future. So it's about managing change. So I think one of the things that we have not done very well in the past is to identify what the issues may be around the future of a place, you know, and you really have to look into a crystal ball and then work out a series of guidelines, principles, regions on a map or whatever, where you could say these areas are potential areas for change, and if change is imagined or considered in these areas, this is maybe the direction that change could take. It's not about finding design solutions, it's about identifying clearly where change can occur and what direction that should take, so that the values that you've identified in your analysis of the place are understood, protected and celebrated into the future. If you don't do that, then you are stuck with something which is saying, well, we don't think this document or this study or this listing allows us to change anything, and that's a common perception out there, and it's what's driving, I believe, a lot of this change. People think because it's heritage listed, particularly if it's on the SHR, you can't change it, and that's complete rubbish.
When the Heritage Act review came out, we knew it would be significant, we knew people would care, but today has really demonstrated that. I want to follow up what David said about the importance of membership as well, and I know a number of people have joined today, but truly we're a membership organisation. We only function through our members, and so it's wonderful that people have signed up, and I really encourage you to do that in the future. Truly, the complexity of bringing together today in really what was only a couple of weeks was amazing. So please, once more, thanks to David Burden and Jane Alexander. And whilst I know they are truly grateful for that applause, their true thanks will be in every person in this room and every person you know making a submission, no matter how small or large, in relation to this review, because it's all of those voices that will be so important in terms of this review.